At my daughter's wedding, she left me in the kitchen with the staff. I heard her whisper, "Better keep her away so she doesn't ruin the photos." I walked out and left a receipt on the table. I paid for the entire wedding. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought my daughter's wedding would be the day I finally understood my place in her life. Standing in the corner of the grand kitchen at the Bellamy Hotel, I smoothed down the silk dress I'd spent weeks choosing, navy blue with small pearls along the neckline. Nothing too flashy. I didn't want to draw attention away from Claire. I never did. "Mrs. Thompson, would you like some water?" One of the kitchen staff approached me, his eyes filled with an emotion I didn't want to recognize. Pity. "No, thank you, dear." I smiled, trying to maintain my dignity. "I'm just taking a little break from all the excitement." That was a lie. I hadn't chosen to hide away in the kitchen while my only daughter celebrated the most important day of her life in the ballroom, just beyond those swinging doors. I had been directed here, guided firmly but politely by the wedding planner Claire had hired. "Mrs. Wilson, perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting here until the formal photos are done," she had said, not quite meeting my eyes. I didn't understand at first. I thought perhaps they needed to take some special shots with just the bridal party. So I nodded and followed her to the kitchen, where the staff was busy preparing the 5-course dinner I had paid for. That was 3 hours ago. The double doors to the kitchen swung open, and I straightened, hoping it was finally someone coming to bring me back to the celebration. Instead, it was Claire herself, radiant in her designer gown, the one that had cost more than my first house. She didn't see me at first, too busy giving instructions to the catering manager. "And remember, we need the champagne fountain running before we cut the cake," she said, her voice carrying that authoritative tone she'd developed over the years, so different from the gentle girl she once was. As she turned to leave, she finally spotted me. A flash of something, annoyance, crossed her face before she composed herself. "Mom, what are you doing in here?" She sounded exasperated, as if I had wandered in against instructions. "I was told to wait here," I said simply, not wanting to create a scene. "Is it time for family photos?" Claire glanced around nervously, then stepped closer, lowering her voice. "About that. We're running behind schedule, and Jason's family is quite large. The photographer suggested we keep the formal photos limited to immediate family only." I blinked, confused. "But I am immediate family, Claire. I'm your mother." "Yes, of course, but..." She sighed, looking toward the door impatiently. "Look, Jason's parents have this whole vision for the album, and his mother thinks..." The kitchen door swung open again, and the photographer's assistant poked her head in. "Claire, we're ready for the family shots." Claire nodded quickly. "Coming." She turned back to me with a tight smile. "Just wait here a bit longer, Mom. Enjoy some quiet time. You know how overwhelming these events can be at your age." My age? I was only 68, not exactly ancient. I opened my mouth to protest, but she was already heading toward the door. As she reached it, the assistant spoke again. "Is that her?" She gestured subtly in my direction. "The one you mentioned?" Claire cut her off with a quick nod and whispered, something I wasn't meant to hear, but in the momentary hush of the kitchen, her words carried to me with perfect clarity. "Yes, that's my mother. It's better to keep her away from the photos. She doesn't quite fit the aesthetic we're going for. Just make sure she stays occupied in here." The door swung shut behind them, but the pain of those words remained, cutting deeper than any knife in that kitchen ever could. I stood frozen, the weight of realization crushing down on me. All the months of planning, the endless checks I'd written, the way I'd dipped into my retirement fund to give Claire the wedding of her dreams, none of it mattered. I was just an inconvenient detail, a financial resource to be used and then hidden away. With trembling hands, I reached into my purse and pulled out the final bank statement. the one showing the transfer of $42,850 for the balance of the wedding expenses. I had planned to discreetly show it to Claire later, not to ask for thanks, but just so she would know that despite my modest means, I had managed to give her everything she wanted. Now, that statement felt like evidence of my own foolishness. Walked slowly through the kitchen, past the pitying glances of the staff who had undoubtedly overheard everything. Through the service corridor, I made my way to the grand ballroom where crystal chandeliers sparkled over laughing guests. No one noticed me as I slipped along the perimeter toward the gift table. I placed the bank statement in an envelope, wrote Claire on it, and set it prominently atop the pile of elegantly wrapped presents. Then, with one last look at my beautiful daughter, now posing with her new husband and his parents, all of them smiling for the camera, I turned and walked out of the hotel. In the cool evening air, with no one watching, I finally let the tears fall. The house was silent when I returned. No congratulatory flowers, no leftover cake, no evidence that my only child had just gotten married. Just emptiness and the ticking of the grandfather clock that had belonged to Claire's father. I slipped off my shoes, the sensible but elegant navy pumps I'd bought to match my dress, and sat in the darkness of my living room. The dress I'd been so proud of now felt like a costume, something I'd worn in a play where I'd foolishly misunderstood my role. For 3 weeks after the wedding, I heard nothing from Claire. No thank you call, no acknowledgement of the money, not even a text to let me know they'd returned from their honeymoon in Bali, also paid for with my savings. The silence hurt more than her words at the wedding. Each morning, I woke expecting to hear from her, to receive some explanation, perhaps even an apology. Each night, I went to bed with that hope unfulfilled. She's busy settling into married life, I told myself the first week. The honeymoon was probably extended, I reasoned during the second. By the third week, I had run out of excuses. One Tuesday morning, as I watered the petunias on my porch, the ones Claire had always said reminded her of her childhood, my phone finally rang with her ringtone. My heart leaped, and I nearly knocked over the watering can in my haste to answer. "Claire!" I couldn't keep the relief from my voice. "How are you, sweetheart? How was the honeymoon?" "It was fine," she replied, her tone clipped and formal. "No," details offered, no enthusiasm shared. "Mom, we need to talk about what you did at the wedding." The watering can slipped from my fingers, splashing water across my slippers. "What I did?" "The bank statement, Mom. You left it on the gift table for everyone to see." Her voice rose with indignation. "Jason's parents saw it. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? They think I made you pay for everything." "But you did," I said quietly, the words escaping before I could stop them. "That's not the point," Claire snapped. "It was supposed to be private. You humiliated me on my wedding day." I sank onto the porch swing, suddenly exhausted. "I didn't mean to embarrass you, Claire. I thought you should have it for your records. You could have mailed it, or given it to me privately. But no, you had to make a statement. Just like when I was in high school and you showed up to parents' night in that awful homemade dress because you were too proud to borrow money for a proper one." The memory stung. I had stayed up 3 nights in a row to make that dress, wanting to look nice for her school function after her father died and our finances collapsed. She'd been so ashamed of me that night, walking several steps ahead, pretending we weren't together, just like at her wedding. "I'm sorry the bank statement upset you," I said finally, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But I'm also sorry that you had me wait in the kitchen during your wedding, that you told the photographer to keep me out of the pictures." A long silence followed. "You heard that?" Claire's voice had lost some of its edge. "Yes," another pause. "Well, you have to understand, Mom. The photos were very important to Jason's family. They're going to be in their summer home and I don't fit the aesthetic." I finished for her, echoing her words from that night. "That's not." I didn't mean. She sighed heavily. Look, you're making this about you, and it's not. It was my wedding day. A wedding day I paid for, I reminded her gently. And now you're throwing that in my face. Her voice rose again. This is exactly why Jason thought it would be better if you weren't featured prominently. You always have, to remind everyone of your sacrifices. My throat tightened. When have I ever done that, Claire? When have I ever asked for anything in return? It's not what you say, Mom. It's how you are. That martyr look, those sad eyes, like you're constantly reminding everyone how much you've given up. Her words hit me like physical blows. Was that how she saw me? As some pathetic, guilt-inducing figure? I thought of the second job I'd taken after her father died. The night shifts at the hospital so she could stay in her private school with her friends. The vacations I never took, the retirement savings I'd depleted, the dreams I'd set aside, all to ensure she never felt the absence of anything. Had all of it just made her resent me? I think we both need some time to cool down, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Fine. Claire's tone was dismissive. Jason and I are having a small dinner party next weekend to show the wedding. Photos. His parents are coming. I'll let you know if we decide to extend the invitation list. The call ended before I could respond, leaving me sitting alone on my porch, surrounded by the flowers that only I seemed to remember were Claire's childhood favorites. That evening, curiosity led me to something I'd been avoiding: social media. Claire had always insisted I stay off her pages. It's embarrassing when moms comment, you know, but I needed to see. Needed to know. There they were. Professional photographs from the wedding, 100 of them at least. Claire and Jason. Claire with his parents, Claire with her bridesmaids, Claire and Jason's extended family, Claire dancing with Jason's father. Not a single photo of me. Not one picture acknowledging my existence. In the album titled Our Perfect Day, I had been completely erased as I scrolled through the comments. Beautiful family. You all look so perfect together. A cold realization settled over me. This wasn't a sudden decision at the wedding. This had been planned. My daughter had intentionally removed me from her narrative, keeping only the financial support I provided. Closed the laptop and moved to my bedroom, opening the closet where I'd stored all of Claire's childhood mementos. Report cards, art projects, the stories she wrote in elementary school where I was always the hero. My mom is my best friend. One of them proclaimed in crayon. When had that changed? When had I transformed from cherished mother to inconvenient embarrassment? As tears blurred my vision, I spotted something at the back of the closet. The dusty suitcase I hadn't used in 20 years, not since Claire's father was alive, and we used to dream of traveling together. For the first time in decades, I found myself wondering what would happen if I packed that suitcase. If I went somewhere, anywhere, where I wasn't just someone's forgotten mother. As days stretched into weeks, I found myself examining my relationship with Claire through a new, painful lens. What I discovered broke my heart all over again. This wasn't a single incident. It was a pattern so gradual I had missed it entirely. I sat at my kitchen table one rainy afternoon, surrounded by photo albums and birthday cards from over the years. The change was there, documented in fading, photographs and increasingly impersonal messages. Claire at 16, rolling her eyes as I took her picture before prom. Claire at college graduation, keeping a careful distance as we posed for photos. The birthday cards that evolved from childish, "I love you, Mommy," to generic pre-printed messages with just her signature. The wedding was simply the culmination of years of slow rejection. I traced my finger over a photo from Claire's 25th birthday, the dinner I'd saved for months to host at that upscale restaurant she loved. In the picture, she was seated between her friends, while I was relegated to the edge, partially cropped out. Even then, she had been placing me at the margins of her life. The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor Evelyn's silver hair and kind eyes. We had exchanged pleasantries over the years, but never really connected beyond fence-line conversations about gardening. "I brought cinnamon rolls," she announced when I opened the door. "Still warm from the oven." I hesitated, embarrassed by my tear-stained face and rumpled appearance, but the gentle concern in her eyes broke through my resistance. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Though I'm afraid I'm not good company today." Evelyn set the pastries on the counter and eyed the scattered albums on my table. "Family memories?" "More like family illusions," I replied, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. She nodded, not pushing, just waiting. Something about her patient silence made the words tumble out. Claire's wedding, the kitchen exile, the cruel comments, the years of diminishing connection. "I gave her everything," I finished, my voice cracking. And somehow it was never enough. Or maybe it was too much. Evelyn poured us both tea from the kettle that had been sitting on my stove. "My Harold used to say that love shouldn't make you smaller," she said, sliding a mug toward me. "It should give you room to grow." I think I made myself smaller to give Claire more room, I admitted. But instead of appreciating the space, she just filled it all until there was no place left for me. And now? I gazed at the scattered evidence of my life. A life centered around a daughter who had methodically pushed me to its edges. "Now I don't know who I am without her," I whispered. "Maybe it's time to find out," Evelyn suggested, her voice gentle but firm. That evening, after Evelyn left, my phone rang. Claire's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, fearing another tirade about the bank statement, but some maternal instinct, or perhaps just old habit, made me pick up. "Mom." Claire's voice had that particular tone, the one she used when she wanted something. "I've been thinking about what you said." Hope fluttered weakly in my chest. "Yes?" "About the money for the wedding. I know you worked hard for it, and I appreciate it. Really." For a moment, I allowed myself to believe she'd had a genuine change of heart. Then she continued. "So I was thinking, since you're so good at managing money, maybe you could help us with the down payment on the house we're looking at. Jason's parents are contributing, but we're still about $40,000 short." The request hit me like a physical blow. After everything, the wedding, the exclusion, the angry phone call, she was asking for more money. "Claire," I began slowly, "I don't have $40,000. The wedding and honeymoon took most of my savings. But what about your retirement fund? Or you could take out a home equity loan. The interest rates are really good right now." I closed my eyes, the painful reality of our relationship finally crystallizing completely. This wasn't love. This was transaction. "Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend?" I suggested instead of answering directly. "We could talk about your housing options face to face." Claire hesitated. "This weekend is tough. We're having people over." "The dinner party with the wedding photos," I remembered. "The one you weren't." "Sure, I'd be invited to." An uncomfortable silence followed. "Mom, don't be like that. It's just, Jason's parents are very particular, and they've been so generous. We need to make a good impression. More particular than the mother who raised you, alone for 20 years? Who put you through college? Who just paid for your entire wedding?" "That's different," Claire insisted, her voice hardening. "You're my mother. You're supposed to do those things." The words hung between us, revealing everything. To Claire, my sacrifices weren't gifts of love. They were obligations to be expected, demanded, then brushed aside once fulfilled. "I have to go," I said quietly. "We'll talk another time." "But Mom, about the house." I ended the call, my hands trembling. Across the room, my gaze fell on that dusty suitcase again. Next to it sat boxes of Claire's childhood things I'd carefully preserved, while my own dreams and mementos had been packed away and forgotten. A strange calm settled over me. For decades, I had lived as if my only value was in what I could provide for Claire. I had accepted being pushed to the periphery of photos, conversations, and eventually, her life entirely. The pattern was clear now. Claire would keep taking until there was nothing left of me, not my savings, not my home, not my sense of self-worth. For the first time, I allowed myself to ask the question that had been forming in the back of my mind since the wedding. What would happen if I stopped giving? What would remain of our relationship if I no longer offered financial support? Most frightening of all, who would I be if I were no longer defined solely as Claire's ever-giving mother? I stood up and walked to the suitcase, running my fingers over its worn surface. It had been my husband's once. One day, he had promised, we'll show Claire the world. He never got the chance. But perhaps there was still time for me to see a little of it. The real estate agent seemed surprised when I called her. You want to sell? But, Mrs. Wilson, you've lived in this house for over 30 years. Exactly, I replied, looking around at the walls that held decades of memories. It's time for a change. In the 2 weeks since my last conversation with Claire, I had made more decisions than in the previous 5 years combined. The first was to finally accept Evelyn's standing invitation to join her book club. The second was to contact a financial advisor to assess my situation after the wedding expenses. The third, and most significant, was listing my house for sale. I'll need something smaller, I told the agent. A place that's just right for me. Just for me. The words felt foreign, on my tongue, almost inappropriate, as if I were being selfish for considering my own needs. The process moved quickly. The housing market was hot, and my meticulously maintained colonial with its large yard attracted multiple offers within days. I accepted one substantially above asking price, with a flexible closing date that gave me time to find my new home. Hadn't told Claire yet. Each time I reached for the phone, something stopped me. Perhaps it was the memory of her casual request for $40,000. Or maybe it was the knowledge that she would view this decision through the lens of how it affected her, not as my choice to make. You look different, Evelyn remarked one evening as we sat on my porch after a book club meeting. The other women had already left, but she had stayed behind, sensing perhaps that I needed to talk. Different how? Lighter, she said. Like you've set down something heavy you've been carrying for years. I smiled, realizing she was right. With each step toward independence, I felt a weight lifting. The constant worry about Claire's approval, the endless calculations of how to financially support her dreams, all of it was slowly loosening its grip on me. I found a condo, I told Evelyn, near the lake. It has a small garden terrace and a view of the water. It sounds perfect, she said, then hesitated. Have you told Claire? I shook my head. Not yet. She hasn't called since she asked for money for a house. I think she's waiting for me to contact her with an answer, preferably a yes and a check. And when she finds out you're selling? The question hung in the air between us. We both knew the answer. She'll be angry, I admitted. Not because she wants me to keep the house, but because she's always assumed it would be hers someday. The weekend before I was scheduled to sign the final paperwork, I decided it was time. Claire needed to hear about the sale from me, not through neighborhood gossip or when the sold sign appeared in my yard. I called on a Sunday morning, hoping to catch her before she and Jason left for their usual brunch with his parents. Mom? Is everything okay? Claire sounded surprised to hear from me. She never called unless she needed something, but apparently expected the same wasn't true for me. Everything's fine, I assured her. But I wanted to let you know about a decision I've made. I'm selling the house. Silence then. What? Why would you do that? It's too big for just me. Too many rooms to clean, too much yard to maintain. All true, if not the complete reason. But, she paused, and I could almost hear her calculating. Where will you go? I've bought a condo near Lakeview Drive. It's lovely, Claire. You should come see it sometime. Another pause, longer this time. But what about? I mean, we always talked about. She couldn't even say it directly, that she had counted on inheriting. This house had likely already mentally spent the money it represented. This is what's best for me right now, I said gently but firmly. Is this because I asked about the house down payment? Her voice took on that wounded tone I knew so well. Are you punishing me? No, Claire. This isn't about you at all. That's the point. What's that supposed to mean? The wounded tone gave way to indignation. I took a deep breath. It means I'm making decisions based on what I need, not on what you expect. After everything we've been through, you're just going to— Claire, I interrupted, surprising both of us. I paid for your wedding. I was excluded from your photos. I was made to wait in the kitchen. Then you called me asking for more money without so much as an acknowledgement of how you treated me. That's not fair. The photos were Jason's parents' idea, and you went along with it, I finished for her. Just like you've gone along, with pushing me further and further from your life, except when you need financial help. My voice was calm, not accusatory, simply stating facts that I had finally allowed myself to recognize. The line went quiet. For a moment, I wondered if she had hung up. I need to go, she finally said, her voice tight. Jason is waiting. Course. But Claire? The house closes next month. If there are any childhood things you want, you should come get them soon. Fine, she replied, and then she was gone. I set the phone down, expecting to feel guilty or sad. Instead, I felt something. Unexpected relief. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I had spoken my truth without filtering it through the lens of what Claire wanted to hear. 3 days later, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Claire and Jason standing on my porch. She looked tense, her posture rigid. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. I opened the door, bracing myself. I came for my things, Claire announced without preamble. Hello to you too, I replied, stepping aside to let them in. Jason, at least, had the grace to look embarrassed. Hi, Mrs. Wilson. Nice to see you again. Claire marched straight to the attic stairs. I'll need help carrying some boxes, she called over her shoulder to Jason, who obediently followed. I remained in the living room, listening to them rummaging overhead, occasionally hearing Claire's sharp directions or Jason's muffled responses, and— Hour later, they came downstairs with several boxes. Jason loaded them into their car while Claire stood in my living room, looking around as if seeing it for the first time, or the last. So, you're really doing this, she said, her voice softer now but still carrying an edge. Yes, I am. What if I needed to move back home someday? What if something happened with Jason and me? The question revealed so much about how she viewed our relationship, me as the eternal safety net, the backup plan, the resource to be tapped when needed. You're an adult, Claire. If something happened, you'd figure it out, just like I did when your father died. Her eyes widened slightly. It occurred to me that perhaps she had never really thought about that, how I had been left alone at 35, with a young child and no warning. It's not the same, she insisted. No, I agreed. It's not. You have a degree, a career, and apparently very supportive in-laws. I had none of those things. Jason appeared in the doorway. That's the last of the boxes. Claire gave him a curt nod, then turned back to me. When you're older and need help, don't expect me to have room for you, she said. The threat delivered with chilling casualness. I looked at my beautiful, accomplished daughter, the person I had centered my entire life around, and felt a profound sadness at what she had become, or perhaps what I had allowed her to become. I never would, I replied softly. My new condo felt like a sanctuary. Bright and open, with large windows overlooking the lake, it was nothing like the shadowy colonial I'd lived in for 3 decades. I had downsized considerably, keeping only what brought me joy. My husband's old record player, my favorite books, the quilt my grandmother had made. The rest I had donated or sold, each item released feeling like another step toward freedom. 1 month into my new life, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Evelyn usually called before visiting, and I hadn't made many other friends yet in the building. Through the peephole, I was shocked to see Claire and Robert, along with 2 people I recognized as his parents from the wedding photos. I opened the door cautiously. "Claire, this is a surprise. May we come in?" she asked, her voice unnaturally formal. I stepped aside, noting the tense expressions on all 4 faces. Claire looked around my new home with barely concealed disdain, while Jason's parents, Elizabeth and Richard, if I remembered correctly, surveyed everything with the critical eye of appraisers. "It's cozy," Claire said, the word clearly a substitute for small. "Thank you, I like it." I gestured toward the sofa and chairs. "Please sit down. Can I offer anyone tea?" "No need," Richard said briskly. "This isn't exactly a social call?" Raised an eyebrow but took a seat across from them. "Then what brings you all here?" Claire and Jason exchanged glances before she spoke. "Mom, we've been talking, and we're concerned about your recent decisions." "My decisions?" "Selling the family home," she elaborated. "Moving to this place. It seems impulsive." "It wasn't impulsive, at all," I replied calmly. "I thought about it for quite some time." Elizabeth leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped in her lap. "Mrs. Wilson, what Claire is trying to say is that we're worried about your financial future. Liquidating your largest asset at your age is concerning. My age again. As if 68 meant I was incapable of managing my own affairs. I appreciate your concern," I said, though I didn't. "But my finances are in order." "Are they?" Richard's tone was skeptical. "Because from what Claire tells us, you spent a considerable sum on the wedding and then immediately sold your home. That suggests financial distress." I looked at Claire, who had the grace to blush slightly but didn't contradict her father-in-law. "I'm not in financial distress," I stated firmly. "I chose to sell my house because it was too large for one person, and required maintenance I no longer wanted to manage." "Well, that's exactly our point," Jason finally spoke up. "You're not getting any younger, Margaret. Eventually you'll need assistance." "And we've come up with a solution," Claire added quickly. I waited, already suspecting what was coming. "We think you should sign over your remaining assets to us," Claire said, her voice taking on that reasonable tone she used when she wanted something significant. "In return, we'll guarantee your care for the rest of your life." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "It makes perfect sense," Elizabeth chimed in. "You wouldn't have to worry about money or healthcare decisions. Claire and Jason would handle everything. And you could move into their guest house once they purchase a suitable property," Richard added, as if offering me a great privilege. The 4 of them looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for my grateful acceptance of their generous offer to take control of everything I owned. "Let me be clear," I said slowly, making sure I understood. "You want me to sign over all my assets, my savings, investments, this condo, to Claire and Jason? And in exchange, I get to live in their yet-to-be-purchased guest house and be cared for?" "Exactly," Claire smiled, relieved that I seemed to understand. "It's the perfect solution." "And whose idea was this?" A moment of awkward silence followed. "We all discussed it," Jason hedged. "But who suggested it first?" I pressed. More uncomfortable glances exchanged. "I did," Claire finally admitted. "But Mom, it's for your own good. You're not thinking clearly lately." I had to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Not thinking clearly? Because I made decisions you don't like? Because you're making rash financial moves, Richard interjected. The house sale. This condo purchase. Ah, I nodded, understanding dawning. And you're concerned that if I keep making these rash decisions, there won't be anything left for Claire to inherit. The stunned silence confirmed my suspicion. That's not fair, Claire protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I looked directly at her. You were counting on my house. When I sold it, you were angry not because you were worried about me, but because that asset was no longer available to you. And now you're here to secure whatever's left. Mrs. Wilson, Elizabeth began, her tone condescending. Families look out for each other. We're simply trying to ensure everyone's interests are protected. Everyone's interests? I repeated. Or just Claire and Jason's? They're the same thing, Richard insisted. What benefits them benefits you. I stood up, suddenly weary of the conversation. No, they're not the same. And I think it's time for you all to leave. Claire's face flushed with anger. So that's it? You won't even consider what's best for this family? This isn't about what's best for the family, I said quietly. This is about what's best for me. For the first time in decades, I'm making decisions based on my own needs, not yours. And that terrifies you. Mom, I've spent my entire life putting you first, Claire. I worked 2 jobs to keep you in private school. I postponed retirement. To pay for your college. I emptied my savings for your wedding, a wedding where I was hidden in the kitchen because I didn't fit the aesthetic. The words poured out, calm but firm, not an accusation but a reclaiming of my own narrative. And now, when I finally start living for myself, you show up with your in-laws to convince me I'm incompetent so you can take control of my assets. I shook my head. No, not anymore. You're being unreasonable, Claire snapped, her mask of concern falling away to reveal the entitlement beneath. Am I? Or am I finally being reasonable for the first time? Richard stood, his expression cold. I can see this was a mistake. Come, Elizabeth. As they moved toward the door, Jason paused, looking uncomfortable. Margaret, think about our offer, please, for Claire's sake. I met his gaze steadily. That's all I've ever done. Think about what Claire wants, but not this time. After they left, I stood by the window, watching as they got into their expensive car and drove away. I expected to feel guilty or sad, but instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of lightness, as if the last chain holding me to my old life had finally broken. On my coffee table sat a brochure I'd been too nervous to open before. European River Cruises for Solo Travelers. I picked it up, my decision already made. 1 year later, I celebrated my 69th birthday on the balcony of my condo, surrounded by friends. Real friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Evelyn was there, of course, along with 3 women from my book club, 2 neighbors from my building, and Thomas, the kind widower I'd met during my European river cruise 6 months earlier. Make a wish, Margaret, Evelyn urged as I prepared to blow out the candles on my cake, a delicious lemon confection from the local bakery, not the expensive designer cake Claire would have insisted upon. I closed my eyes briefly, but there wasn't much to wish for. For the first time in decades, I felt complete, content in my own skin, living a life that belonged entirely to me. As everyone clapped, Thomas caught my eye from across the table and smiled warmly. We weren't rushing into anything. We both carried too many years of experience to hurry love, but his steady presence in my life had been an unexpected gift, a companion who saw me clearly and appreciated what he saw. Speech, called Martha from book club, raising her glass. I laughed, shaking my head. No speeches, just thank you all for being here. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this. It was true. A year ago, I had been defined solely by my role as Claire's mother, a role that had diminished me even as it consumed me. Now, I was Margaret Wilson, avid reader, enthusiastic traveler, part-time volunteer at the local literacy center, and woman who was finally living her own story. The afternoon passed in pleasant conversation and laughter. As my guests began to leave, each with warm hugs and promises to meet again soon, Thomas stayed behind to help clean up. "You seem happy," he observed as we washed dishes side by side. "I am," I admitted. "Happier than I've been in years." "Any word from Claire?" The question didn't sting the way it once might have. "No. Not since our disagreement." After our confrontation, Claire had tried different tactics, first anger, then guilt, finally a tearful plea about family obligation. When none of these worked, she had simply stopped calling. The last I'd heard, through mutual acquaintances, she and Jason had purchased a house in an exclusive neighborhood with financial help from his parents. "I'm sorry," Thomas said, genuinely sympathetic despite never having met my daughter. "Thank you. But honestly, it's better this way. Our relationship had become—" I searched for the right word. "Toxic," he supplied. I nodded. "Yes, and one-sided." I kept pouring in, but nothing came back. Thomas dried the last plate and set it carefully in the cabinet. "Some relationships are like that, like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom." We moved to the balcony, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. In comfortable silence, I reflected on the changes the past year had brought. The trip to Europe I'd always dreamed of, the watercolor classes I'd finally found time for, the small but meaningful contributions I now made at the literacy center, helping adults learn to read. My life had expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined when I was focused solely on Claire's needs and wants. The doorbell interrupted. My thoughts? Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Expecting someone else?" "No," I replied, puzzled. "Probably a neighbor." When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with Claire. She looked thinner than I remembered, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, as if she'd made a hasty decision to come. "Mom?" she said simply. "Claire," I responded, surprised but composed. "This is unexpected." She glanced past me, spotting Thomas on the balcony. "Oh, you have company. I can come back." "No, it's fine." I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Would you like to come in?" She entered cautiously, like a visitor to a foreign country, uncertain of the customs. I introduced her to Thomas, who graciously excused himself after a few minutes, saying he needed to get home to his dog. "He seems nice," Claire commented after he left. "He is," I agreed. "We met on my European cruise." "You went to Europe?" She seemed genuinely surprised. "When?" "6 months ago. Rhine River cruise. It was wonderful." Claire looked around the condo, taking in the changes since her last visit. The new paintings, the bookshelf filled with titles. I'd finally had time to read, the photographs from my travels displayed prominently where family portraits had once dominated. "You've been busy," she observed. "Yes." An awkward silence fell between us. Finally, Claire reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I came to give you this," she said, holding it out. I took it, curious. Inside was a birthday card, store-bought, with a generic message, but she had written a note. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking. The past year has forced me to see things differently. Jason and we're not together anymore. His parents decided I wasn't suitable after all. I know I've been terrible to you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to wish you happy birthday and let you know I'm trying to understand where I went wrong. Claire." I looked up from the card to find her watching me nervously, a vulnerability in her expression I hadn't seen since she was a child. "I'm sorry about Jason," I said, meaning it. She shrugged, trying for nonchalance but not quite achieving it. It turns out they only approved of me when they thought I came with a substantial inheritance. When that didn't materialize. She trailed off. That must have been painful. Claire nodded, her composure slipping slightly. The thing is, they treated me exactly how I treated you. Like I was only valuable for what I could provide. She met my eyes directly. It made me see what I'd become. I gestured to the sofa. Would you like some tea or cake? It's lemon, your favorite when you were little. A flicker of surprise crossed her face that I had remembered this detail. You still like lemon cake? Some things don't change, I said simply. We sat with our tea and cake, the conversation hesitant at first, then gradually becoming more natural. Claire told me about her divorce, her new apartment, the therapy she had reluctantly started. I shared stories from my cruise, my volunteer work, my newfound interests. There were awkward pauses, moments when the weight of our past pressed between us. But there was something else too, a tentative honesty that had been missing for years. I don't expect things to go back to how they were, Claire said as she prepared to leave. I know I've done too much damage for that. Things couldn't go back anyway, I replied. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. She nodded, accepting this truth. Could I? Would it be okay if I called sometimes? Maybe we could have coffee occasionally? I considered her request carefully. The old Margaret would have immediately agreed, eager to rebuild any connection with her daughter. But I had learned the value of boundaries, of protecting the peace I had worked so hard to find. I'd like that, I said finally. But Claire, it would have to be different, equal. I can't go back to being just a resource for you. I understand, she said quietly. I don't expect that. I'd like to know who you are now. After she left, I returned to the balcony, watching as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear over the lake. I didn't know if Claire's change was temporary or lasting, born from genuine insight or simply the shock of experiencing herself what she had inflicted on me. But I did know that whatever happened between us moving forward, I would face it as the woman I had become, a woman who valued herself enough to set boundaries, who recognized her own worth beyond what she could give to others. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Hope everything went okay. Still on for the gallery opening. Tomorrow? I smiled and typed back, yes. Looking forward to it. In the reflection of the balcony door, I caught a glimpse of myself. Straight-backed, serene, eyes bright with the light of self-discovery. Not just Claire's mother, not just a wallet or a safety net. Margaret Wilson, complete in herself. The invisible woman from the wedding kitchen was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who had finally claimed her seat at life's table. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.